What's up, what's up, what's up? It's your boy Greg here with another episode of the Skullbug. The end of dry January. I know it's only the 30th, there's still a day to go, but I don't care. Fuck it, it's over. On this episode, I'm going to be drinking Chronique from man, I'm gonna butcher this pronunciation. Le Trefle Noir. Or Le Trefle Noir. I don't fucking know how to pronounce it. My French is still horrible. Not much has really progressed in that camp. But in terms of this specific beer, it's a red ale, 4.8%. It is, of course, brewed in Quebec, obviously, and the flavor profile is listed as biscuit and nutty. Nutty beer for a nutty guy. So, I decided that I wanted to do something different with this series. This is like the 10th episode, I think. The last episode I did was, of course, Liquid Death, the sparkling water that I did because it was dry January and I didn't really know what to do in terms of Skull Milk episodes during this time period. But now that it's the end of the month and I'm back to drinking beer, we're back to doing the regular stuff. But the thing that I want to do differently with this is that I don't want to really talk about the flavor profile of these beers anymore. I realize that that's not really what I want this series to be. I kind of want to embrace more the free-form discussions, or at least the free-form ideas that I've been doing after describing the taste of the beers in these episodes. Like, usually what the timeline or the layout of these videos has been is that I'll discuss the flavor profile of the beer as I'm drinking it, and then go on to give you, my opinions on things that are happening in the world, or give you like updates about my life. But I think I just kind of want to dispense with the beer stuff because honestly, it's not that interesting to me. Like, I love craft beers, don't get me wrong, and I think tasting them on camera could be good for a person that is good at doing that kind of thing. But like, I don't really think I'm suited to that, in all honesty. So instead of doing that, I'm just going to crack a beer open in the video, and then I'm going to talk about whatever the fuck I want to talk about. And the thing that I want to talk about in particular with this episode is in regards to work. And the reason why I want to talk about work is because it's something that's been on my mind a lot lately. And I have to be very careful with the words that I choose with my wording in this video, because I don't want I don't want heavy things to come down on me, if you know what I mean. I don't want to invoke the fuzz, I guess you could say. But I've worked a lot of shit jobs. I've worked mostly minimum wage jobs up until recently, very recently in my life. So my first job ever, well, I guess if you want to be technical about it, my very first job was, I used to do setting up the gymnastics equipment for the gymnastics team or crew or whatever in my high school. And I used to do that like twice a week, and we'd get paid under the counter. It was like $5 every time we did it, and it only took about an hour, so it was definitely a rip-off of my time. But that was really the first job that I ever did outside of odd jobs, like mowing lawns, shoveling driveways of snow, and that kind of thing. But then I got my first real job, which was a summer job at a water park in my hometown called Splash and Putt. I did that for 4 summers in a row because I didn't do any work throughout the school year. It was purely a summer job, and that job sucked. I hated every second of it. It was god awful, but I made enough money to support all of my hobbies. I managed to buy like a big screen TV and a lot of my video game consoles through that job, so it was definitely worth it. And then after that, I got my first real actual job after I graduated from college, which was working at Dollarama. And that sucked about as much as you could possibly imagine. And I hated every second of that job too. The only good thing that ever came out of that job was a relationship, actually, that I got in with a person who, the relationship didn't last very long. We dated for like a year and a half, and it ended rather unfortunately. But I ultimately look at that as a good thing that came from that job. Meeting her and some other people who I've been, on and off friends with for quite a while. These are people who I maybe don't talk to that much these days, but who I still consider to be friends of mine. Then after that, I got a job at Value Village. There's only one Value Village in Newfoundland, and I got a job at that. I worked there for about 4 to 6 months. I can't remember how long it was exactly, as just like a regular front of the store employee, cashier, organizing the clothes on the racks and that kind of thing. And then I eventually became a manager. I was a front end manager, and that job sucked ass. Working the front of the store was nowhere near as painful as being a manager was, and it was in that second that I learned I did not want to be a manager or have any kind of responsibility in terms of that ever again. No. It's straight up fucking sucks. Hate it. And the reason why it fucking sucks is because every customer that has a problem with you, or has a problem with the store, rather, they're going to come up to you, and you're the one who has to bear the brunt of that. Every time there's an employee who isn't doing their job correctly, it's your responsibility to go and shit on them, basically, and tell them to, get their head out of their ass and start pulling their weight around. Everybody who has a problem, they come to you, or you have to go to them, and it's just too stressful. It's something that I'm not built to do. I'm very independent, and I hate doting on other people. So after I quit that job, that's when I moved to Montreal, and I started working at a call center, which is as miserable as it sounds. If you've ever worked a call center job, this one was not much different. Now, granted, instead of trying to sell things, we were trying to raise money for charities, so there was a bit of positivity there in terms of at least what the company was doing, but by and large it was still shit work of trying to, call up random people who already donated to these charities and trying to coerce them into giving more. I don't want to actually say that it was coercion, because I guess as a legal term, it's not. You're trying to convince people through sound arguments, well, sometimes sound, sometimes not, that they should be giving more. But as soon as you would call somebody, it was an automatic system, right? So what would happen is you'd go and you'd log in to the computer, and you'd open up the program that they would use to call people, and the program was the one that dictated who you spoke to. So you'd just be sitting there and kind of waiting, and then you'd get a call, and you had no control over it whatsoever. It would just, the call would come to you because the system was dialing hundreds of people all at the same time. And as soon as you're finished with that call, then sometimes you'd wait a few minutes and then you'd get another call. But the thing is that the longer that I was there, the shorter and shorter the interval between those calls got, no matter what charity you were calling on behalf of. So it became really, really stressful and really mind-numbing to have literally no time in between these calls, because the people at this company were trying to push you to get as much productivity out of you as possible. So I really hated that job. I hated that job with all my fucking heart, and it actually is the first job that made me actively depressed. My partner, who I'm with right now, you ask her, and she'll tell you that, because we started dating when I was still at that job, and I was at that job for several months while we were together, maybe I was maybe even there for a year. I don't know. I was at that job for 2 years. But we started dating about halfway through that, and if you ask her today, she'll say, yeah, he was fucking depressed when I met him. And it sucks ass that it got to that point, but that it is what it is, right? So eventually I quit that place, and then I got a job at a random warehouse that was just packaging food for people. I don't want to mention the specific company, but it sucked because I had to wake up at like 5 o'clock in the morning and catch the metro and then the bus out to this cold ass warehouse, like out in the middle of fucking nowhere, and go to work there, get off at, I think it was 3 o'clock, come home and just be completely fucking exhausted because of being on my feet all day. I was a janitor at this warehouse. And it was awful, you know, I just couldn't fucking stand it. And then I got the current job that I have, which is working at a warehouse. Once again, I'm not going to say the name of the company or where it's located or anything. And it's honestly the best job that I've ever had. Look, it has its problems, but in comparison to some of the other jobs I've worked, like the other 5 or 6 jobs that I've had over the course of my adolescence and my adulthood, it's pretty fucking decent. Like, I can at least say that. But I've noticed a trend in myself that I'm not sure exactly how to feel about it. I've noticed that typically I spend about a year at a company before I start getting really exhausted from the work. And I think the problem with that is the monotony of it. Because most of these jobs, you know, they're service jobs. Whether it's being just a attendant at a water park. No, I wasn't a lifeguard, I was a go-kart track attendant, because this particular water park has go-karts and like bumper cars, bumper boats, swimming pools, water slides. Like that's what it has. And I was an attendant for the go-kart track there. So I was that was a service job because I had to deal with all the customers that would come through with their children. Then Dollarama, I was a cashier, so that was a service job. Value Village, that was a service job. Working at the call center, that was a service job, though it wasn't face-to-face, which made it somewhat better than the other things. Then, because, you know, when you deal with a shitty customer in person, they can get up all in your face, but like when you're dealing with them over the phone, it's like, you know, you might get written up for it, but you at least have the power to just hang up and stop listening to their bullshit. So these are all service jobs, and the nature of service jobs is monotony. Like, when you are a cashier, you're just doing the same thing for 8 hours, or, you know, most people are probably doing it for longer than 8 hours, if we're being honest, in some parts of Canada and some parts of the United States as well. I know a lot of people do part-time jobs as cashiers, but regardless of what it is, like, you know, some people do spend upwards of 10 to 12 hours working these jobs where you're just on your feet behind a fucking cash register, scanning groceries. Here's another carton of milk, another bag of onions, another bushel of apples, or whatever the fuck, you know. It just keeps going and going and going, and there's no change whatsoever. And it's the same thing no matter what shop that you work at, no matter what store it is always monotony. Every single one of these jobs is predicated on monotony. So I can deal with a change of environment, and that makes things easier. But after I've done that for about a year, that's when I start getting sad or pissed off, or both. And typically I force myself to stay there longer than I should, because I realize that, like, you know, in this market it is hard to find jobs, especially right now in the middle of a pandemic. Like, my God, I know multiple people who've had a really, really difficult time finding work right now, especially here in Montreal, which is one of, if not the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic right now. So I don't feel very lucky at all. I feel lucky that I have a job, but it just sucks that I know so many people who are out of work. But yeah, so after I start to get this feeling of monotony and the sadness and like the depression and the anger starts setting in, I force myself to stay there because I don't want to go through the rigmarole of looking for another job again. You know, because I've had 6 or 7 jobs at this point, and I'm honestly just kind of sick of looking around. I wish that I could be doing what I actually want to do, which is making art. You know, I want to be an artist, but I can't fucking do that because I don't feel like I'm good enough, any of the things that I do to actually make money off of it. I wish that I was good enough at YouTube to make money off of it. I wish I was good enough at music to make money off of it. I wish I was good enough at writing to make money off of it. But the truth of the matter is I have so many hands and so many different pies, so many fingers and so many different pies, that I can't focus on any one thing. And I know that that's maybe a me problem, but it's just something that I have a really, really hard time doing. So I end up staying at these jobs way longer than I should. I stayed at that fucking call center for 2 years, over 2 years actually, just like about a month over 2 years. And by the end of it, like, I wanted to die. And when I finally quit, it was like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I didn't even have another job lined up. You know, I had barely any savings, if I had any at all. And I just said, you know what, fuck it, I don't care. This is making me so miserable that I quit. And I did manage to find another job within a couple of weeks. But, you know, there are so many people out there who can't do that. So, why am I talking about all this? Well, I don't really feel like I'm the appropriate person to start talking about the things that I want to start talking about, because I feel like I have a big problem with actually articulating my points, especially when it comes to politics, which, yeah, I know, scary. Don't want to get into political discussions on this channel because we're all about beer and metal on here, but, like, fact of the matter is, I care a lot about politics because it's something that governs my life, it governs your life, it governs the lives of everyone that you know. It governs everyone in this country and the world over. So people should give a shit about politics, and I really, really do. Especially, I feel like over the course of this pandemic, I've become way more aware of political issues that I care about, and I've become way more invested in them, and I just want to talk about them. So, I don't know, maybe this channel isn't the best place to do that, but I'm going to try because I don't really have any other avenue to do it with. But the thing is, I think since COVID has started, people have become more and more aware of how the capitalist system is fucking them. Now, people have been aware of this for a long time, but it feels like people are becoming... they're getting more used to the idea, or they're warming up to the idea of actually doing something to change it. Now, I don't want to speak about the broader culture as a whole, because I can't speak for everyone. At least in the online circles that I run in, I'm seeing more and more people actually open up to the idea of saying, fuck capitalism, like, we need to abolish this system completely. But the average person, I feel, still isn't quite there yet. You know, I feel like most people are still, I'm going to sound cliche here, but I feel like most people are still asleep, or whatever. You know, they feel like, well, things are just good the way they are, or this is the way things have always been, so we just got to keep trucking along and maintain the status quo. But, like, personally, I say fuck that. I have no reason to want to stay in the status quo, and I realize that to some people that's an uncomfortable thought, you know, to change things up a lot. But when you look around at the system that we live in, like, just here in Montreal, there are thousands of people who are homeless and out on the streets. And not all of those people are homeless because, you know, they made bad choices, or, you know, they got too invested in drug use and they got addicted and then they couldn't deal with anything. So they spent all their money on that and then eventually became homeless because of it, you know. A lot of people are homeless because they've lost their work and there's been no moratorium on evictions, so they're just being put out in the streets with nowhere to go. And even if some of those people out there are homeless because they have a drug problem, why does that mean that they're condemned to be stuck out there on the street? You know, I think that's bullshit, and I think it's evidence that the capitalist system is failing us, especially when you're looking at, like, the billionaire class, particularly in the United States, people like fucking Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, who, you know, have raked in billions upon billions of dollars and are literally having a race to see who's going to be the world's first trillionaire over the course of this pandemic. Like, they were already rich beyond comprehension for humanity, but now, like, it's just exponentially increased. Like, I can't express to you how disgusted I am at the fact that these two men have more money than the rest of the fucking populace combined. It's just unreal, it's unreasonable, it's disgusting, and it should never be. And if this system exists and allows for two people to have more wealth than the rest of the entire country, the United States has something like 300 million people, Canada has 40 million people, something around that range. And if two people have more wealth than all of those people combined, that in and of itself is evidence that this system is faulty, and it's failing, and it's been failing, if not completely failed, for years, decades, ever since it was instituted. So what I really think needs to happen is I think we need to have a strong labor movement. This is something that Paul's Ego talks about a lot, and I've been watching him for years and years, and I haven't always agreed with everything that he says. He's a YouTuber, in case you're not aware. He's currently part of the podcast on here called Deep Fat Fried, which I'm a huge fan of. And I don't always agree with everything that Paul says, but I mean, he has the right of this. The only way that things are going to change in this society, in this world, is to actually take things and turn it on its head by creating a huge labor movement. But the problem with that is that people don't really want to put in the work to do it, and it's unfortunate, Like, at my job right now, I've been watching as the benefits of this job, the perks of this job, have been slowly but surely eroded away in the year and a half or so that I've been there. It used to start off where we got paid lunches, and we only had to work 8 hours from 8 o'clock to 4. And there were some other things too. We were getting extra money because of the pandemic and all this kind of stuff. And I've been trying to talk to other people, like, talking to my coworkers and be like, hey, like, isn't this kind of bullshit that, like, we used to get paid lunches and now our lunches are unpaid and we're forced to come in half an hour earlier every single day because of that? Like, the reason it pisses me off is because I value my time, like, heavily. The time is the only thing, the only resource that you have that the government cannot fuck you out of. It's the time that you get on this earth. Like, nobody can take that away from you. I mean, they can take it away from you by doing things like forcing you to, wait in line at the DMV or stuff like that, or, forcing you to spend all of your time at a job so that you can make enough money to support your family or to pay your rent, pay for food, pay for gas, pay all of your bills, your internet connection, like your cell phone plan. And I know, like, oh, internet and cell phone plan, you don't need that. Motherfucker, it's the 21st century. You need those things if you want to exist in this society. So, yes, they can steal your time, but, like, why are we allowing them to? We live in a country, at least in Canada and the United States. These two countries are so rich with resources and produce so much fucking capital, so much wealth, that it is absolutely asinine that we have people who are out on the street right now, who are out of work, who are unemployed, who can't support their families, who are working 2 or 3 jobs just to keep a roof over their head and their children's heads and keep food on the table. That is fucking ridiculous, and it should not be. So, I don't really know what the answer is on how to actually get a labor movement started, but I think the first thing to do is look at your very own job. Look at the place where you're working right now, because that's what I'm doing. I'm looking at the job that I have, and I'm seeing my coworkers who don't really seem to care all that much that, their time is being taken away, that even though it's only a half hour, like, every day. I know that it sounds like I'm whining, but, that's 2 hours in total, or 2.5 hours over the course of the whole week that is being robbed from us. So I've been trying to convince them, like, hey, this is kind of bullshit, I don't like this, and neither should you, because that's 2.5 hours that I could spend doing something way more important. That's 2.5 hours that I could spend here in my house writing a song, or spending quality time with my partner, or talking on the phone with my parents, or having a good time watching a movie, or exercising and getting more physically fit. I could be doing something way more worthwhile with my time instead of having to spend that time at work because my fucking boss decided that it was fine to take away our paid lunches and force us to come in half an hour earlier to account for that loss of time in terms of productivity out in the warehouse. That's fucking bullshit, isn't it? And I'm fucking pissed. And you should be pissed too, because whatever company you work for, it doesn't fucking matter. They are fucking you in the ass. They are taking everything that you are worth, and they are just royally just, And it's fucking bullshit. We should not stand for it, because look at what happened, just as an example, with the whole Reddit thing against the stock market, with GameStop and all that. That was collective bargaining. That was, well, not collective bargaining, rather, but collective action. That was a bunch of people who said, you know what, fuck it. We have the ability to do this. We know exactly how their game is being played, so let's play the game too. And as soon as the poor people started rising up and started getting money, then the rich people, they started losing their fucking shit. They started pushing for legislation to ban people from talking about the stock market online. It just doesn't make any fucking sense. The game is rigged, and to quote a character from Fallout New Vegas, the game was rigged from the fucking start. So the only way that I see us getting beyond this is to start forming labor movements, start forming unions, whether it's something small scale or something large scale. I mean, it's going to have to start small scale. Start looking at your own workplace. Look at the job that you work in fucking right now, and look at all the ways that your boss and the corporation is fucking you out of your money and your time. Because the only thing that you have on this earth that can't be taken away from you is your fucking time, your lifeblood. You are here, luckily, if you're lucky, you'll be here for maybe somewhere between 80 and 90 years. Most of us aren't that lucky. Most of us keel over in our 60s and 70s from health problems. But if you survive that long, do you really want to be in your twilight years and look back and say, hey, look how much fucking time I wasted working for a company that didn't give a fuck about me? Is that what you want to do? Is that where you want to be when you're 70 or 80 years old, still working probably in some factory that's breaking your back and taking you for every cent you're worth? To look back on the rest of your life and say, hey, this has been happening to me since I was old enough to fucking work, since I was old enough to get a job. That's not where I want to be. It shouldn't be where you want to be either. So sorry for this ultra political rant, but it just really pisses me off. And it should piss you off too. So please stay safe out there and take care of the people around you. Take care of your loved ones. And start a fucking union.